Carmen Arrand and I'm the owner of Artistry. I'm here today with Art Canvas Factory, doing an interview on canvases and where I started with my business. I'm based in the Free Range Lifestyle Centre in Fourways. If you would like to contact me for bookings, I do art classes for kids ranging from 6 up. I do adult art classes in watercolour. I also do pop-up workshops. We do ceramic skull painting. We do mandala art therapy. I have a workshop called the Ladies' Tea and a watercolour class. I also started an event called the Thirsty Artist, where we drink lots of wine and we paint in watercolour. My Facebook page is Artistry, so you can find me on there. I also have an Instagram, Artistry. I also do commission pieces, so if you would like a commission painted, you can contact me. I am working on new designs for prints, so I also have watercolour prints available at my studio. I will be selling art stock as well. We'll have our watercolour friendly canvases, our table easels, and we'll soon have watercolour paint available to buy. So if you'd like to contact me, you can find me on Facebook at Artistry. So I'm mixing my watercolours. I've used very little paint product and I'm using more water. The brushes that I use are very absorbent, so they absorb watercolor quite a bit. The canvases that I'm using are really amazing. What you need with watercolor is to have a canvas that doesn't absorb the paint too much, but also doesn't allow it to sit in a puddle, and as you can see, this canvas doesn't. A lot of your canvases that you get at the shops, they have gesso over it, which makes it almost impossible to paint with watercolor, because it sits like a puddle. Whereas this canvas lets it absorb slightly. And then obviously when you're done with your canvas, you can't just leave it. You've got to apply a sealant and a UV protector onto it, because if you don't and someone wants to wipe their canvas down, there goes all your watercolor.
So now when you have a painting in front of you, do you have like a set thing of how to start, or do you just paint?
So with watercolor, you've got to start with a base tone. You've got to start with a base. You've got to start with a base color.
Light.
So yeah, I always start with a light tone, and then I kind of build on top of that. You can see the light tone is peeking through the dark.
Yes.
And if the colors aren't blending nicely, I just add a little bit of water, and then it spreads like that. So I always start light, and then I go darker, and then I start shading. So I've got a specific process that I work through.
Okay.
The lighter tones coming in first, and then the darker tones coming in later.
Okay, so what do we have here? You've got a commission piece on wild dogs.
Yes.
So do you just paint out of your head, or do you copy?
No, so I need a little bit of like inspiration. I do use pictures to have a look and see the colors of the wild dog, and I then draw it and then paint. So this is a commission order for a lady who urgently needed something to give to her husband, and they immigrated, and so I don't have a lot of time to paint this. So yeah, if you have something you want me to paint, I'll draw it first and then I paint it with watercolor.
Oh, okay. Alright.
So yeah.
So why watercolor?
You know, there's a huge perception that like watercolor is more difficult than oil and acrylic, and it's the most difficult medium to learn, which I can in a way understand that. But for me, watercolor is so much easier than any of the other mediums that I've ever painted with. Watercolor, it's very soft on your brushes. You can reuse your paints quite often. I use the Rolf's range of watercolor, and it comes in little tubes. So yeah, watercolor, you only use a little bit of paint. You use more water than you do actual paint product. So it works out cheaper if you get a tray like this, and you get the brushes. If you forget paint on your brushes, which a lot of artists do, especially if they're like working late at night on an art piece, you forget to clean your brushes sometimes, or you don't clean them properly. If you do that with watercolor, your brushes will be fine.
You just pop them in water.
Yeah, and you can reuse the paint as well. So if my paint in my palette dries, I'll just add a little bit of water and I'll reuse it.
Why do you think people's impression of watercolors difficult?
Yeah. So, we try and control everything in our lives: work, children, finances, and watercolors a medium that you can't really control that much. You actually got to learn to work with it rather than work against it. So I just feel like people think that they don't have a lot of control over the medium, which is true, but if you learn how to use the medium properly, and if you're shown how it works and the different techniques that you can use to create a specific effect, once you've got it, you've got it, and it's so simple from then out. You can turn over a lot more paintings with watercolor, and then also a lot of people don't know that you can actually paint watercolor on canvas. So I've had a lot of people who've come to me and say, "You paint on canvas? Wow, I didn't know you could do that with watercolor." And yeah, you can. So these canvases that I'm working on are really amazing for watercolor. And paper's good, you can frame the paper. But I just want people to be more aware of the possibilities with watercolor, and that you don't just need to use paper, you can now use canvases on it. Yeah. So watercolor is a lot easier to blend and mix. I know with oils you've got a few layers of paint to put on, and you've got to wait in between those layers for it to dry. Then acrylic, you've got to blend until your arm falls off. The blending of acrylic is just time consuming. Whereas with watercolor, if you've got your two colors and they are still wet, and you basically make like a little paddle, and if your paddle connects, your colors blend. So blending is so easy, and with watercolor we do layers. So you do your layer of color starting from lightest to darkest.
Okay.
Yeah, and then your detail all comes in last.